is that whatever, we live in such a great country that if you really set your mind to doing something, that you can achieve it. And that it's never too late to try to achieve those goals, as I'll talk a little bit about today. So, to kind of give you a little bit about my career path, I grew up in a small Iowa town, a farm community, and when I was growing up, I really didn't think, I thought the space program was great. I grew up when the first original astronauts were being selected, but living in such a kind of a remote area, I just never thought that I would have the opportunity to do something like that. Well, I went off to college, and when I was in college, they had the Vietnam War was going on, and they had the lottery to see who was going to go in the military, and it's the only lottery I ever won in my life. It was the lottery, and I decided to kind of preempt the process, and I joined the Marines in 1971. And this is me getting my wings as a naval aviator in 1973, I believe. And so this is me flying in airplane. I flew the A6 Intruder, which is no longer around as an active airplane, but it was a great one to fly. And I spent some time with the Marine Infantry on the ground. This is with my forward air control team. And then I went off to, the Marines gave me the opportunity to go to school in electrical engineering. And at the time, I was really thinking about achieving my dream of being a doctor. And I think I'd been in the Marines about 4 or 5 years. And I wrote to medical school. Actually, it was the same medical school that I ended up going to, Baylor College of Medicine, at that time. And I said, I'd really like to come back to school and become a doctor. And they said, well, we think you're a little bit old at that time. I think I was 26. And they said, you might want to consider something else. And so at that time, I stayed in the Marines and went off to school of electrical engineering. This is my son helping me out a little bit with my books. And about that time, NASA started thinking about hiring new astronauts for the space shuttle program. The space shuttle program had been conceived in the early 70s, I guess, as kind of a new way to get into space, kind of a space transportation system, they called it. And so they were going to need more astronauts to man the crews of the space shuttle missions that were going to be going up. I had never really thought about becoming an astronaut. Again, I was kind of like, this was something that other people could do, but I never really thought much about it. But I was actually overseas. I was commander of a small unit in Japan. And one day, this message came across my desk and said, NASA is looking for astronauts, and if you're interested in applying, you can apply through the Marines, and then from the Marines, we'll send it to the Department of Defense, and if you get through that selection, we'll send it off to NASA. So I kind of thought, what the heck, that sounds like a cool thing, and I just did I was at the right point in my career, had the right qualifications, and so I put in an application, and about a year later, they said, why don't you come to Houston? We'd like you to be an astronaut. So after interviews and a lot of physicals and things, I was selected as an astronaut in 1979, 1980. So the space shuttle program was, the first flight of the shuttle program was in 1981, in April of 1981. So I got there just before the program really got off the ground, so to speak. And when you become an astronaut, it's not like you're selected and all of a sudden you know everything. It's like you're just kind of starting out from ground zero. It's kind of like being a doctor. If you get selected for medical school, it doesn't mean you're a doctor yet. You've got a lot of training ahead of you. So we went through a year of classes and visits to other centers. We learned all sorts of different things, and we started then supporting the missions coming up. And so I spent about 4 years of helping other people fly their missions. I worked in mission control. I worked in one of the avionics laboratories in one of the buildings here that helped develop procedures and test out equipment. I worked on future missions. So I did a number of jobs. And then in 1984, I was selected for my first flight. And my first flight was, every flight has its own patch, and this was the patch from our first mission. It was all military mission, and so I can't tell you much about what went on, although if you go to Wikipedia, you can read a lot about what actually went on. Everything's in Wikipedia. So I can't officially tell you much about what was going on other than it was a classified mission. We were all military officers, 3 from the Air Force, 1 from the Army, and I was the lone Marine. And that first mission is always something really special. It was the first flight of the space shuttle Atlantis. It had a very illustrious career, and just about 30 years later, it served from 1985, the first mission, till I think it flew one of the last missions in 2011. And so it had a very illustrious career, flew I think 40 or 50 flights. And I think this month they're having the dedication of the shuttle on display at the Kennedy Space Center of Atlantis. But that first mission is just something really special. A couple things that I remember is just kind of going out to the launch pad and having heard what it's like to be going up into space, and then being completely surprised by what the experience was actually like. You go out about 3 hours before the mission, you sit on the launch pad, and about 6 seconds before the engines actually light, this is the space shuttle, and on the back there are 3 liquid-fueled engines, and then there are these 2 large solid boosters. The liquid-fueled engines are powered by hydrogen and oxygen that's in this large tank here. And these you can turn on and turn off. And so we always would start the engines about 6 seconds before the flight, and they would go through a kind of a profile to make sure that everything is working properly. If it's not, you can shut them down. And that actually happened a couple times during shuttle missions. And so when those engines light, you kind of have this swaying this way, and then when it goes back through the middle again, these 2 solid rocket boosters go, and once those light, you're on your way. And so you count down, you lift off, you get a kind of a gradual, slow lift off of the pad, but then things really pick up, and you get all this vibration for the first 2 minutes of the launch. After 2 minutes, you're pretty much above the atmosphere, and these 2 solid rocket boosters are separated, and now you're just flying on the 3 main engines. Then the ride smooths out, G-forces build up. It's kind of like a bear or something is sitting on your chest, and it's very difficult to breathe. And 8 minutes and 32 seconds into the flight, you've gone from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour in 8.5 minutes. Pretty good acceleration. Try doing that to your quarterback. And you're in space. And you go from having all this weight on your chest to floating. Everything floats up. Quite an experience. And I think one of the biggest things that I remember about that first flight is just the first vision of the Earth from space. It's just marvelous. I remember my first vision was of Dakar, Senegal, which is where President Obama just was there this week. And that was the first sight that I saw from space. It was just a marvelous sight, and the first sunrise and sunset were just amazing as well. So I came back from that first mission, and I'd been selected for a second mission already before I even came back, because we were flying lots of, 1985 was the year we flew more space missions in 1 year than any other. I think we flew 11 Space Flight Center. So we were all really busy getting ready to fly another one before we even finished the one that we were on. So I was in training for a mission coming up, and on January 28th, 1986, we were talking about mission rules and procedures for this upcoming mission. And that was the day the Challenger launched. And we stopped our meeting so that we could watch the launch. And of course, that was the day of the tragedy of the Challenger. And 7 friends that were on that mission all perished. And very sad moment, and it was something that we became very determined that we were not going to let their death be in vain, that we were going to fly again. And I was fortunate enough to be on the first mission. It was first crew that was selected after the Challenger accident. And it wasn't for about almost 3 years before we flew another mission. What had happened on the Challenger flight was that you see these little lines